Welcome to the ninth episode of the AddVANCEO Deep Dive. Today, we're exploring the architecture of excellent teams.
Yeah, and it is such a massive, complicated topic.
It really is. I mean, working in a team is often described through this lens of interdependency, right? Like, where each member is affected by the actions of others.
Right, but at the same time, individual contributions can be really difficult to measure.
Exactly. So today, we're diving into this fascinating stack of organizational psychology and management research to move way beyond the surface level buzzword of, teamwork.
Because teamwork isn't just something that magically happens.
No, it's not. Our mission today is to uncover the actual structural pillars that make a team high-performing. We're going to decode the natural psychological stages of team development and, this is the scary part, look at the risks that can undermine even the most talented groups.
And what's fascinating here is that we often just assume teaming is a natural byproduct of putting smart people in a room.
Like, is this just a spontaneous chemical reaction or something?
Right. But the research proves it's actually a highly structured, deliberate discipline.
Totally. And I want to speak directly to you, our listener, for a second. Whether you are prepping for a major project meeting tomorrow, or, I don't know, leading a newly formed task force, or just trying to figure out why your current team feels so dysfunctional, this deep dive is going to give you a completely new lens on how humans collaborate.
Because before we can even talk about excellence, we have to define what a team actually is.
Yeah, because we throw that word around a lot. But there's a difference between a working group and a true team.
All right, a massive difference.
Yeah.
In a working group, tasks are completely separated.
Like an assembly line.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Individuals just compare their performance against each other. It's very much an I mentality. But in a team, there's a joint realization of tasks.
So the results are measured collectively.
Right. It's collective measurement. You don't win unless everyone wins.
Okay, let's unpack this. So a working group is kind of like people riding a bus together.
Okay, I like that.
Like, they're heading in the same direction, but if one person takes a nap in the back row, the bus still moves. It still gets there.
Right.
But a true team is like a rowing crew. If one person stops paddling or loses the rhythm, the entire boat goes off course.
That is a perfect analogy. And to build that rowing crew, an excellent team doesn't happen by accident. It's built on 5 indispensable pillars.
The LRPI acronym, right, from the sources.
Yes, LRRPI. And we should probably start with the O and the M, which is objectives and mission. This is the first and most vital pillar.
Which seems obvious, but managers always assume clarity exists when it really doesn't.
Exactly. Members might feel completely lost, or they're pursuing contradictory goals. But there's a critical difference between the mission, which is the what we do, and the vision.
The vision being the why.
Right. The vision is what we aspire to become.
Oh, this reminds me of that amazing anecdote from the research, the one about the NASA janitor in 1962.
Yes, the JFK story.
Yeah. So President JFK is touring the Space Center, and he asks the janitor what he's doing. And the janitor replies, "I'm helping put a man on the moon, Mr. President."
And that proves exactly why a shared vision matters so much.
It's not just sweeping floors.
No, it creates profound motivation. It gives people a true sense of belonging to something bigger.
Which leads right into the R in LRPI, right? Roles and responsibilities.
Yes. Efficiency depends on distributing those roles based on talent and technical skills.
But that's more than just skills, isn't it?
Much more. A group only becomes a true team when members hold themselves mutually accountable.
Right, mutual accountability. And what about the P, procedures and rules?
Every team needs them, both written and unwritten rules. That's what moves a group from total chaos to order.
Which probably makes the interpersonal relations a lot easier to manage.
Exactly. Positive relationships are built on trust and communication, and they directly influence productivity.
And the L is leadership, which ties it all together.
Right. But effective leaders aren't just managers focused on planning. They're pioneers. They motivate, supervise, and build those effective relationships.
Okay, so if those 5 pillars are the structure, I mean, the actual foundation teams still aren't just born excellent, right?
Oh, definitely not. Teams are dynamic organisms.
They have to grow up.
They do. And they have to pass through specific, sometimes really painful stages. This brings us to Tuckman's model of group development.
Okay, let's walk through Tuckman's model. The first phase is forming.
Right. The honeymoon phase.
Everyone's super polite.
Exactly. Relations are formal. Members act like strangers. They're basically just asking, why am I here?
Just get in the lay of the land. But then comes storming. And the research highlights this as the most dramatic, difficult phase.
Because it is. This is where conflict actually emerges. Members start debating approaches, they resist control, they compete for positions.
Okay, let me ask a pointed question here because most of us absolutely hate conflict.
We do.
Right. So we actively try to skip the storming phase. We just want to rush straight back to being polite. Is that a fatal mistake for a team?
Yes, it absolutely is. If we connect this to the bigger picture, skipping storming leads directly to a false sense of peace.
A false peace. Wow.
Yeah, because suppressing that necessary friction traps the team in a state of superficial functioning. They never establish real boundaries.
And you need those boundaries for the next phase, which is norming.
Exactly. In norming, the team establishes rules and shared goals. Members actually start to accept each other's viewpoints.
There's probably a huge sense of relief there, right? Like, okay, things are finally moving forward.
A massive relief. And only after surviving those 3 stages can a team reach the ultimate phase,
To perform him.
performing. Where trust is primordial, hierarchy takes a back seat, and it's all about we succeeded.
Right, the collective mindset. But, and this is big, but leaders have to be incredibly wary of a specific trap here.
You're talking about dorming. Yes, dorming, or groupthink. It's what happens when a team tries too hard to preserve that artificial harmony we talked about.
Right, so the desire for harmony completely overrides critical appraisal.
Exactly. Diversity of viewpoint just disappears. Creativity plummets.
Mhm.
Members isolate themselves from outside ideas just to avoid rocking the boat.
It's a silent killer. And there's another hidden killer mentioned in the sources, right? Social loafing.
Yes, or in the French research, paresse sociale.
Paresse sociale. That's when individuals put in less effort in a group than they would alone.
Right, they hide behind the collective. It's usually caused by a lack of individual evaluation, or the task being monotonous, or simply because the group is too large.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Social loafing doesn't just happen to lazy people. It happens to highly brilliant people, too.
Oh, absolutely. Look at Dr. Meredith Belbin's research from the Henley Business School.
The Apollo teams.
Yes, the Apollo teams. They put these highly brilliant, top-tier, talented individuals
A
together.
room full of absolute geniuses.
Right, and you'd think they'd be unstoppable. But they surprisingly failed compared to less brilliant but more diverse teams.
Wait, really? Why did the geniuses fail?
Because of a complete lack of diverse roles.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, putting 5 geniuses in a room doesn't equal genius output if they all want to play the exact same role. It breeds both groupthink and social loafing.
So to rescue a team from that, to prevent groupthink, and guide them through storming, that requires a very specific type of guidance.
It does. And this is where we have to clearly separate management from leadership.
Because they're used interchangeably all the time, but they are not the same thing.
Not at all. Management is about organization, control, and planning.
Keeping the trains running on time.
Right. But leadership is about vision. It's about understanding people and creating a culture where, as the source says, everything becomes possible.
So what does a great team leader actually look like, practically speaking?
Well, they're persuaded of a few key truths. First, they know they don't have to have all the answers.
That's huge, taking that ego out of it.
Yeah. Second, they know they shouldn't make all the important decisions alone. And third, they understand that the team defines the leadership, not just the leader.
That reminds me of that incredible quote from the ancient Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu that was in the sources.
Oh, yes, that's a perfect example.
Yeah, he said, the ultimate mark of a great leader is that when the task is finished, the people say, we did it ourselves.
Exactly. The leader becomes almost invisible. The real challenge is finding that balance between orientation and delegation.
Knowing when to take the wheel and when to let others learn to drive. I want you, the listener, to just reflect on that for a second. Think about your own boss or even your own leadership style. Are you managing the schedule or are you actually leading the vision?
It's a tough mirror to look into.
It really is. But, okay, moving to the final piece of research because this part completely shattered my assumptions.
The temporary teams.
Yes. Because we typically think of the ultimate Lao Tzu team as this deeply bonded family that stays together for like a decade. But David Burkus's findings show something completely different.
Yeah, Burkus found that the absolute best, most innovative teams are often temporary. They're project-based.
Which sounds so counterintuitive. How does a temporary team outperform a long-term one?
Well, let's look at that fascinating study by Brian Uzi and Jared Spiro. They analyzed Broadway musicals.
Broadway musicals?
Yeah, from 1945 to 1989. They wanted to see what made a show financially and creatively successful.
And what did they find?
They found that the most successful Broadway shows had a very specific mathematical mix of team members. They combined old colleagues and new colleagues.
Okay, so people who had worked together before mixed with total strangers.
Exactly. The old colleagues brought knowledge of the process. They understood the established norms.
Right, so they kept things from falling apart.
Right. But the new colleagues brought fresh ideas. And more importantly, they forced the group back into a creative storming phase.
Oh, wow. So they deliberately introduced friction.
Yes, because too many old colleagues meant complacency. They would fall into dorming.
Just doing the same old routine?
Exactly. But too many new colleagues meant absolute chaos. So that perfect temporary mix in the middle, that created magic.
That is just incredible. And when you think about it, our modern gig economy, project-based work lives are actually perfectly designed to recreate that Broadway magic.
They really are, but it requires work.
Right, which ties perfectly into the core philosophy of this show. At AddVANCEO, we recognize that teaming is an active skill. Sustainable development requires clarity of reality.
Which means using health checks to evaluate if objectives and roles are truly understood.
Exactly. And moving from just a collection of individuals to a real team where accountability is collective.
And valuing interdependence. Recognizing that diversity, like we saw with the Belbin roles, is the actual key to innovation.
So, synthesizing all of this, teaming is not a passive state. It's a demanding discipline. You have to build the 5 LORPI pillars. You have to bravely push through the discomfort of the storming phase.
And you have to actively guard against the traps of groupthink and social loafing.
Right. While understanding that true leadership, like Lao Tzu said, makes the leader almost invisible.
And this raises an important question for anyone listening.
What's that?
Now that you understand these dynamics, you have the power to actively diagnose and fix the teams you interact with every single day. You aren't just a passenger anymore.
That is such an empowering takeaway, and I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. We spend so much of our time wishing our workplaces were completely free of friction.
Oh, totally. We all want easy days.
Right. But based on what we've learned today about the absolute necessity of the storming phase and the real danger of groupthink, what if the current tension you are feeling with a colleague isn't a sign of a failing team at all? What if it's the exact creative friction needed to produce your greatest work? How might your work life change if you reframe tomorrow's argument not as a roadblock, but as the spark that builds a masterpiece?
I love that.
In our next deep dives, we will continue to explore the tools and behaviors that turn groups into high-performing units. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the AddVANCEO podcast. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening.